Listen, I might be 30 years old, but YA books will always hold a very special place in my heart, especially queer YA. As somebody who grew up in the 2000s, somebody desperate for representation, never quite seeing myself reflected on the pages of the books I was reading, seeing the sheer amount of queer YA books now will never, ever be something that I take for granted. I can't even imagine being a questioning teenager in this time in 2025. Like, how much has the world changed in just the last 15 years? 15 years ago, I had nothing. There was nothing. Here are some of my absolute favourite Sapphic YA novels, and we're going to start with my actual favourite of all time. The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Ciara Reyes. This novel follows 16-year-old Yamilet Flores. She is a queer Mexican-American teen navigating the challenges of a strict Catholic school whilst trying to keep her sexuality a secret after being outed at her last school. She is so determined to fly under the radar. She's just got to get her education and also manage to somehow keep an eye on her older brother Cesar. But when she meets Beau, an openly queer classmate, all of that becomes a hell of a lot harder. First up, the representation in the pages of this book is incredible. Yami's voice is raw, is funny, and painfully real. She truly reads like a teenage girl, but a teenage girl who has been through a lot in her very few years. Her dad, who is her favourite person in the entire world, has been deported. She's joined a new school. She's struggling with her sexuality. Like, she's really going through it, but she's also got alongside that all of these standard teenage girl problems as well. Hormones and friendship issues and just trying to figure out who she is. It just beautifully explores themes of identity, faith, family expectations, and the immigrant experience. This isn't a book about romance, although Yami and Beau are kind of at the heart of it. This is a book about self-acceptance, resilience, and the struggle of finding a place where you truly belong. Ciara Reyes' writing is phenomenal, it's witty, heartfelt, and packed with emotional depth. It will make you laugh and cry in the same chapter. I love the family dynamics between Yami, Cesar, and their mum, and their dad as well, I suppose, through FaceTime. This does cover some pretty heavy topics. I would perhaps recommend looking up some trigger warnings for this first before you dive in if you're sensitive to certain topics, but I don't want to say what they are here because I don't want to spoil the book, so I won't. Just, if you are sensitive, maybe look it up. I just adored this book and I think about it all the time. The Henna Wars by Adiba Jagadar. This is about Nishat. She's a Bengali Muslim teen who comes out to her family as lesbian, only to face rejection. She's told that she can be anything she wants to be, but Muslim girls cannot be gay. And Nishat loves her family. She doesn't want to lose them, but also struggles to live a lie. Alongside this at home, she's also having a very rough time at school with racism. She's just really struggling. And that's when Flavia comes into her life. She's biracial, she's black Brazilian and white Irish. She is beautiful, and Nishat can't really seem to stop thinking about her for some strange reason. But then, when their teacher announces a business competition with a cash prize, Flavia decides to go with the same business idea as Nishat, which is henna tattoos. Being Bangladeshi, Nishat feels like it's only right that she is the sole henna artist, but Flavia can't understand why Nishat would care so much. This book raises a whole lot of points around racism and cultural appropriation. It is quite a hard read at some points. It's kind of like a car crash in slow motion, but as you can imagine, the pair eventually do begin to work through their differences. I love the cultural representation in this book. You don't often get to read about Muslim lesbians and the struggles of being queer in that sort of specific conservative house. This book really doesn't shy away from the hard conversations about identity and racism and privilege and sexuality. Nisha is a very complex character. There are points in this book where she is maybe not entirely likeable, but she's also correct a lot of the time. She just goes about things in a very weird way, the kind of way that a teenage girl would probably go about things. Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. I adored this book so much. This is one of the cutest books I've ever read in my life, and I think about it a lot. It's just a joy beginning to end. Ophelia After All follows, obviously, Ophelia. She is a high school senior who is well known for her love of flowers and her obsession with boys. She's always had crushes on boys. She's never once questioned her sexuality. She is boy mad. She's romantic at heart, Ophelia. Like, that is who she is at her core. But then what happens when she starts to get a crush on a girl? Her entire identity is in question. This is a coming of age, coming of queerness story. She's a senior, it's prom season, everyone is out there trying to get dates, and Ophelia finds herself wanting to go with a girl, but she is terrified of everyone's perceptions of her changing. She doesn't want her family and her friends to see her in a different light, like she is still the same person she always was, but now this is going to change everything. And to me, this was just unbelievably relatable. Like, one of my main fears for years and years before I came out was people not seeing me in the same way. There was something about being tainted in people's new perceptions of me that just terrified me to my core. I knew that most people in my life would be very supportive, but I just couldn't hack the idea of them seeing me differently. And I've never seen that particular fear written about in a book before, so maybe I was biased, I just really enjoyed it. I also loved how this book showed the very not linear process of coming out, the ups and downs, the going back on yourself, convincing yourself that it's just a phase, diving in head first, getting scared, doing it all again. Like, coming out is hard and it's messy and it's not a straight line. I also adored the cast of side characters in this as well. Every single character felt fleshed out and well rounded. Ophelia has this super dynamic and diverse group of friends surrounding her. Some of them are old friends, some of them are new, and they will help her find her place in the world. There's drama, there's arguments, but none of it ever feels necessarily contrived, overcomplicated. It just feels like being a teenager trying to find her place in the world. And as somebody who is in a desperate need for a queer friendship group, this just made my heart yearn. I was so happy for Ophelia and sad for me that in my 20s I still can't find that community. But can you tell that I loved this book? Next up, we've got two books by the same author. We have Not My Problem and The Falling in Love Montage by Ciara Smyth. I tried to choose just one to talk about in this video. I couldn't. I love them both equally. They're both my babies. Both set in Ireland. Not My Problem is about Ideen. She's a very quick-witted teenage girl who is dealing with a lot in her life. Her mum has a very bad drinking problem, her home life is pretty rough, and she is trying to hold everything together by just being the class clown. Like, she goes to school and she just wants to be silly. And she also just so happens to have an arch nemesis in the form of a girl called Maeve, who is this massive overachiever who just seems to float by in life with no problems, and Ideen is quite jealous of her. But it soon turns out that Maeve is actually being crushed under the pressure put on her by her family, and she comes to Ideen asking for help. She says, "Please push me down the stairs, sprain my ankle, and give me a break." And Ideen, she agrees. But then other students hear about it and they end up coming to her for help as well. And the pair, in the end, make this unlikely alliance. And as you may be able to guess, the forced proximity, the intertwined lives, lead them to discover that maybe they don't hate each other as much as they originally thought. I think the thing I loved most about Not My Problem is how real this entire story felt. Like, Ideen is such a charming, charismatic girl. This book is genuinely laugh out loud funny, but her problems are very real and it never really veered into unbelievable territory despite the plot of it. And also, this isn't a coming out story. Like, Ideen is out, she is proud of who she is. None of the problems that she has anything to do with her sexuality. This is just a book about a teenage girl with home problems who just so happens to be gay. And the romance isn't even the focus of this story. It's a very cute side plot, it's a big side plot, but it's not the heart of this book. Again, I just love this. And I also love the Falling in Love montage, also set in Ireland. Saoirse is a very jaded teenager. She doesn't believe in happy endings or love at first sight, and just like in Not My Problem, she is also dealing with a lot of problems at home. Her mum has early onset dementia and is in a care home, and she's just really struggling with everything, as she would do. Saoirse is very burnt out, she's exhausted, and she is not looking for a relationship. And that's when Ruby comes into the picture. The pair meet at a party, and there are undeniable sparks, but that doesn't change Saoirse's mind. Like, she doesn't want a relationship. But seeing as Ruby is English and she's only in Ireland for the summer, they come up with somewhat of a loophole. They don't need to fall in love, but they can still have fun. And seeing as they're both rom-com fans, they decide to make a checklist of all the cliche moments in romantic comedies that they want to live together. Over the course of the summer, they're going to tick off every single cliche on the list. But of course, as expected, things don't go to plan. Saoirse is so grumpy, she's so awkward, and I just adored her. Ciara Smyth does such a good job at writing believable teenagers. She just has this really authentic voice. She also does a really good job at balancing the heaviness of Saoirse's home life with the lightness of her relationship with Ruby. Also, something I loved was this book has no qualms about using the word lesbian, which does seem like such a simple, small thing, but even in books about lesbians, authors still hesitate to use the word. Like, the word lesbian has been so stigmatised throughout history that so many lesbians even hesitate to use the word, and that included me for many, many years. Whilst queer communities are slowly reclaiming the word lesbian with pride, there's still this lingering discomfort around the term for so many people, including authors who generally seem to prefer sort of more umbrella terms, broader labels, like queer or gay, which are just softer and a bit more widely accepted. It seems that people see the word gay as less confrontational than the word lesbian, and I could make a whole video about that. I might make a whole video about that. That's a good idea. But anyway, the falling in love montage, no qualms about using the word lesbian. Also, to be fair, a lot of these books are the same. I think all the ones I've spoken about so far all quite proudly use the word lesbian, apart from Ophelia After All, because she's bisexual, so she doesn't describe herself as a lesbian. Anyway, I just love Ciara Smyth's books, and I'm waiting in anticipation for the next one. Something slightly different next, we have This Delicious Death by Kayla Cottingham. I wanted to recommend something slightly different from a very classic YA sapphic rom-com kind of book. This is a dystopian, horror-light thriller mystery vibe with a side of romance. This is set in a world in which there was a pandemic known as the Hollowing, which turned infected humans into ghouls who crave human flesh. They become cannibals. However, luckily, scientists were able to come up with a synthetic flesh called synflesh, which satiates the hunger in the same way that human flesh does, and now the infected are finally able to rejoin regular life without risk of eating people. I personally wish this book went into way more detail about the Hollowing and the disease in general, but that's very me. I love an infectious disease. I love researching, not having. But the main focus of this book is actually a group of friends or group of ghouls who are attending a music festival in the desert, only when they get there, one of them loses control and ends up killing and eating a boy. But she shouldn't have, like, the synflesh should be satiating her cravings. Like, there was no reason for her to kill somebody. So what made her lose control? The group go out on a mission to find out what the hell happened and how can they stop it happening again. I found this book just super camp, super silly at points, and the romance side plot was very cute. It's best friends to lovers with a trans girl love interest, which isn't something you see all that often. I love all the different sort of elements of representation in this book. It was maybe a bit heavy-handed at some points, but it was cute anyway. It's not the best book I've ever read, but it was fun, and I wanted to include something a little bit different in this video. For those of you who maybe aren't so much into romance, this is different. Rhubarb's come to say hi. Say hi, Rhubarb. She says, purr. And finally we have How to Excavate a Heart by Jake Meyer Arlo. Is this technically a holiday/Christmas book? Yes. Is it also one of the best YA books I've ever read? Big yes. I read this as part of my mission to read a whole load of Sapphic Christmas books, and this was by far one of my favourites from the lot. I loved this so much. I thought it was so well written and different from so many other books in the same genre. And I don't think it has to be Christmas time for you to read and enjoy this book. Like, it is Christmassy, but it's not Hallmark aggressive Christmas. You get what I mean? It has year-round potential. Also, this is featuring older teenagers. They're like college, university age. So this is like slightly older YA. It's a bit more mature. So this is about Shani. She's a Jewish teenager who's at college, and she has an internship over winter break at a paleoichthyology lab in Washington, DC, which is basically the study of old fish fossils. Being Jewish, Shani doesn't celebrate Christmas, so she has no qualms about being away in December, but she's also been going through it after going through a terrible breakup with her ex-girlfriend. And then on the journey into the city on the first day, her mum nearly runs over another teenage girl called May, who is understandably furious and immediately takes a disliking to Shani. But then their paths keep crossing and eventually they give in. They slowly become friends, and then more after they spend Christmas Eve snowed in together. I feel like in this book you slowly fall more and more in love with these characters as they fall in love with each other. It is very, very authentic, I felt like. I loved learning more about Judaism, as I feel like it's not something I come across all that often. I love the cast of side characters here. I love how real the lesbian relationship felt. It's all very first love, messy lesbian drama. It felt very true to the teenage experience, and I felt a bit like I was living vicariously through Shani and May because I never got to be an out teenager. And again, this is another book that uses the word lesbian. Love it. When I tell you it was so hard to narrow down all of the Sapphic YA books I've read to just 7, I was originally going to do 5 and I couldn't narrow it down anymore. So Rhubarbe's back. She has opinions. Do you want to share? She's like, stop talking to a camera and feed me, woman. Is that what you were saying? Can you confirm? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like the recommendations. If you have come across this video because you've come on YouTube and you've searched YA Sapphic books and I've popped up, then subscribe, because I talk about Sapphic books on the internet. It's kind of my entire thing. It's what this entire channel is about. So come and join us over here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.